Before I begin this story, I need to make something absolutely clear. What I'm about to tell you isn't fiction. I've changed some names and locations to protect myself, but everything else happened exactly as I'm going to describe it. 3 months ago, I was a normal person. I had a job, an apartment, friends, and plans for the future. Now I sleep with the lights on. I've installed 6 different locks on my door. I've covered every mirror in my home, and I still don't feel safe. Because I know they can find me. They've done it before. And if you keep listening, they might notice you too. Consider this your only warning. It started during a road trip back from my cousin's wedding in Montana. I was driving alone, taking a scenic route through parts of rural Wyoming. It was late October, and the sun was already setting by 6 p.m. My GPS lost signal about 2 hours after I left the main highway, but I wasn't concerned. I had a paper map, and the route seemed straightforward enough, a 2-lane country road cutting through national forest land. The sign said Timber Creek Road, but locals apparently called it something else, Skinwalker Road. I dismissed it as local superstition. Fucking idiot that I was. Night fell quickly out there, a darkness so absolute it felt physical, like black water pressing against the windows of my car. My headlights carved a narrow tunnel through it, illuminating maybe 30 feet of asphalt ahead, and nothing more. No streetlights, no other cars, just my headlights, and endless pine trees that seemed to lean in over the road. I turned on the radio to break the silence, but got nothing but static. I tried my phone, no signal, just me and the darkness now. That's when I noticed the smell. At first, I thought maybe I'd hit an animal without realizing it, that sickly sweet rot of decomposition. I checked my mirrors, but saw nothing behind me. The smell got stronger, filling the car until I was breathing through my mouth to avoid gagging. I rolled down the windows. The October air rushed in, freezing cold, but clean. Thank God. I took deep breaths, trying to clear my head. That's when I saw it. Something moved on the road ahead. My headlights caught it just for a second, a pale figure crossing from one side to the other. It looked human-shaped, but wrong somehow. The proportions weren't right. And it moved too fast, like footage being played at double speed. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching on the asphalt. My car skidded to a stop. Nothing. The road ahead was empty. Jesus Christ, I muttered, heart hammering in my chest. Sleep deprivation. Had to be. I'd been driving for almost 12 hours. I took a deep breath and continued driving slower now, eyes straining against the darkness. 10 minutes later, my headlights swept across another figure on the road. This time, it didn't dart across. It stood directly in my path, facing away from me. A person, a woman, I thought, judging by the long dark hair. She wore what looked like a white dress or nightgown. She was barefoot. I slowed to a stop about 20 feet away from her and honked my horn. She didn't move. Hey, I called out the window. Are you okay? Do you need help? No response. She just stood there, motionless, head slightly tilted to one side. Fuck this. Every horror movie I'd ever seen was screaming warnings in my head. But what if she was actually hurt? What if she was in shock from an accident? I put the car in park but left the engine running. Grabbed my phone and flashlight, stepped out into the biting cold. Ma'am, are you hurt? Do you need me to call someone? I approached slowly, the beam of my flashlight trained on her back. Her hair hung down past her waist, matted with something dark. 10 feet away now, still no movement from her. I'm going to come around to see if you're okay, I said, my voice shaking. I circled wide to come around to her front, keeping my distance. The flashlight beam swept across her bare feet first. Her feet were facing me, but her hair was still hanging down her back. Her head was backward. I froze, the realization moving through me like ice water. She began to turn, not her body, just her head rotating further in that anatomically impossible way until her face came into view. It wasn't a face. Where features should have been eyes, nose, mouth, there was just smooth, pale skin stretched tight over a skull, with a single vertical slit running from the top of the forehead to where the chin should be. The slit began to open. I ran, dropped my flashlight, sprinted back to my car, threw myself inside, and locked the doors. Started driving before I'd even closed my door properly, tires spinning on the asphalt. In my rearview mirror, I saw her drop to all fours and skitter across the road like an insect, moving in a jerky, unnatural way, coming after my car. I floored it, the engine screaming in protest as I pushed it well past the speed limit. The creature receded in my mirrors, then disappeared in the darkness. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely keep the car on the road. I drove like that for miles, too terrified to slow down, constantly checking my mirrors. That's when my headlights began to flicker. No, 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 I muttered, tapping the light switch frantically. They stabilized for a moment, then went out completely, plunging the road ahead into absolute darkness. I slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a stop before I drove off the road. Tried the lights again. Nothing. The engine was still running, but all electrical systems seemed dead. In the silence, I heard something move across the roof of my car. A slow, deliberate scraping sound, like nails or claws. Then came the tapping on my window. I sat paralyzed, unable to breathe, as the tapping continued. Tap, tap, tap. Not urgent or aggressive. Almost polite, like a neighbor coming to borrow sugar. Don't look. Whatever you do, don't look. But my eyes betrayed me, drawn to the driver's side window like a magnet. There was a face pressed against the glass. A human face this time, an elderly man with papery skin and clouded eyes. He smiled, revealing blackened gums and rotting teeth. Car trouble. The voice came through the glass with unnatural clarity. I can help, just unlock the door. His mouth didn't move when he spoke. I jammed my key back into the ignition, tried to restart the car. The engine turned over but wouldn't catch. Where you headed, friend? The knotman asked, still smiling that terrible smile. I know these roads, every inch of them. I can guide you. Go away, I whispered. The thing outside tilted its head at an impossible angle, the neck stretching, twisting. Don't be rude, it said. We don't get many visitors out here. And we're so hungry for conversation. I tried the engine again. Nothing. The face pressed closer to the glass, flattening against it like something soft and malleable. I just want to sit inside with you. It's cold out here, so cold. Just unlock the door. The man's face began to change. The features shifted, rearranged themselves. The skin bubbled and flowed like melting wax. Where the old man had been, there was now a young woman, beautiful, with pleading eyes. Please, she said in a different voice. I'm lost. I need help. Let me in. Then it changed again, a child this time, tears streaming down its face. I'm scared. Please, mister, please let me in. I closed my eyes, covered my ears, but the voice penetrated not through my ears but directly into my mind. Let me in. The car shook violently, as if struck by something massive. When I opened my eyes, the windows were surrounded by faces, dozens of them, all different, all pressing against the glass, all speaking in unison now. Let us in. I screamed, pounding on the steering wheel, stomping the gas pedal. Miraculously, the engine roared to life. The headlights blazed on, illuminating nothing but the empty road ahead. The faces were gone. I drove fast, too fast for the winding road, but I didn't care. I had to get away. An hour passed, maybe two. I lost track of time, focused only on putting distance between myself and whatever I'd encountered. Eventually, the trees thinned out, and I saw lights ahead. A gas station, civilization. I pulled in, nearly crying with relief. The attendant, a real human being, thank God, looked alarmed when I stumbled inside. Later, he told me I was pale as a corpse, with bloodshot eyes and a nosebleed I hadn't even noticed. "You came from Timber Creek Road?" he asked after I'd calmed down enough to explain where I'd been. I nodded. He crossed himself. "Nobody takes that road at night. Nobody who knows, anyway." What? I had to clear my throat. "What's out there?" The attendant looked out the window toward the darkness beyond the station's lights. "People around here don't talk about it much. Bad luck, but there are stories. Old stories about things that can wear human skin. Things that need to be invited in." "Skinwalkers?" I asked, remembering the local name for the road. He shook his head. "Different, worse. Skinwalkers are at least earthly. These things ain't from here. Never were." He let me use the station's landline to call for a tow truck, which wouldn't arrive until morning. Offered to let me stay in the back room overnight. I accepted it gratefully. That night, I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those faces pressed against the glass, heard those voices. When dawn finally came, the tow truck arrived. The driver examined my car right there, in the gas station parking lot. "Electrical system's fried," he said. "Never seen anything like it. Like something sucked all the juice out." He towed my car to the nearest town with a garage. I got a motel room while they worked on it. That night, I finally slept, exhaustion overcoming fear. I wish I hadn't. In the dream, I was back on that road, walking this time, not driving. The darkness was absolute except for a faint light in the distance. I followed it, my feet moving of their own accord. As I got closer, I saw it was a single house in a clearing, an old farmhouse with a porch light on. Warm yellow light spilled from the windows. Smoke curled from the chimney. Safety. I knew with dream certainty that if I could reach that house, I'd be safe. But something was following me. I could hear it moving through the trees on either side of the road. Something large, with a heavy, dragging gait. I didn't look, didn't dare. The house seemed to get no closer no matter how fast I walked. Then I heard a voice calling my name. A familiar voice, my grandmother's. She had died when I was 12. "Hurry," she called from the house. "Hurry, they're coming." I broke into a run. The thing in the woods matched my pace, crashing through the underbrush parallel to me. Finally, the house was there, just yards away. My grandmother stood in the open doorway, her silhouette backlit by the warm light inside. "Quickly," she urged, "you have to be invited in." I reached the porch steps, took them two at a time. Relief flooded through me as I crossed the threshold into the light and warmth of the house. My grandmother closed the door behind me, locking it with 3 heavy dead bolts. "Thank God," I said, turning to embrace her. But it wasn't my grandmother anymore. The thing wearing her face smiled at me, its mouth stretching wider than any human mouth could, spreading literally from ear to ear. Its teeth were needle-thin and too numerous to count. "You invited yourself in," it said in a voice that was a twisted parody of my grandmother's. So polite. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. But I wasn't alone in the motel room. Sitting in the chair in the corner was a figure, silhouetted in the darkness, perfectly still, watching me. I fumbled for the lamp, switched it on. The chair was empty, but on the wall above it was a wet handprint. Too large to be human, with fingers that were unnaturally long and thin. I checked out of the motel immediately, got my car from the garage even though the repairs weren't complete, and drove straight home without stopping except for gas. 2 days of driving, staying awake on gas station coffee and fear. I thought I'd left it behind. I was wrong. The followers. It started small. Things moved in my apartment when I wasn't looking. I'd put my keys down, turn away, and they'd be somewhere else when I looked back. The TV would turn on by itself in the middle of the night, always tuned to static. Then the dreams returned, always the same. The road, the house, The thing with my grandmother's face. But each time, I got a little closer to the house before waking. Each time, the thing at the edge of the woods got a little closer to me. I started seeing things in mirrors, movement at the edge of my vision that would disappear when I turned to look directly at it. A figure standing behind me that wasn't there when I spun around. I didn't tell anyone what was happening. How could I? They'd think I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. But then others started to notice. A coworker asked about my friend who had been waiting for me in the parking lot after work, a tall, thin man who she said had been staring at our building for hours. When I said I didn't know anyone matching that description, she showed me a picture she'd taken to show security. The figure in the photo was blurred, like it had moved suddenly when the picture was taken. But I could make out enough to see that it wasn't a man at all. Its proportions were wrong, its limbs too long, its head too small. And it was looking directly at the camera, even though my coworker swore it had been facing the other way when she took the photo. That night, someone knocked on my door at 3:17 a.m. 3 sharp knocks that woke me from another dream about the road. I didn't answer. The knocking came again, more insistent. "I know you're in there," a voice called. A voice I recognized from the road. "I just want to talk. Let me in." I called the police. By the time they arrived, there was no one there. No evidence anyone had been at my door. The officers looked at me like I was crazy, suggested I might want to talk to someone about my fears. But they didn't see what I saw in the hallway after they left. Wet footprints leading from my door to the stairwell. Footprints that weren't human, too large, too many toes, spreading water that smelled like stagnant pond scum. The next day, I bought a camera, set it up facing my front door, recording constantly. That night, the knocking came again. Same time, 3:17 a.m. This time, I checked the live feed from the camera on my phone before calling the police. The hallway was empty, but the knocking continued. When I checked the footage later, there was a 7-minute gap in the recording. The timestamp jumped from 3:16 a.m. to 3:23 a.m. No explanation, no evidence of tampering. I started researching obsessively, looking for answers, for others who might have experienced similar things. I found a forum dedicated to Timber Creek Road and the surrounding area, stories from locals, warnings. According to the posts, the entities on the road were known by many names in different cultures. Skinwalkers to some, Wendigo to others, the Anishinaabe called them Manitou. But they all describe the same characteristics: the ability to mimic human appearance and voices, the need to be invited in, the persistence once they've marked a victim. And they all agreed on one thing: once these things notice you, they never stop hunting. It's been 3 months since that night on the road. 3 months of deteriorating mental health, of constant fear, of wondering if I am being haunted or simply losing my mind. Last week, something changed. The knocking stopped. The dreams stopped. The movement in mirrors stopped. For 5 blissful days, I thought maybe it was over. Then I got a letter, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with an address written on it, an address in my city, just a few miles from my apartment. Below it was a time, 3:17 a.m., and a short message. "We've been so patient. We've knocked so politely. Now it's your turn to visit us." I recognized the handwriting. It was my own. I didn't go, of course. I'm not stupid. But my curiosity got the better of me. I drove past the address during daylight hours. It was an abandoned house, boarded up, condemned. But the porch light was on, just like in my dreams. I drove home shaking, locked every door and window, waited. That night, my phone rang at exactly 3:17 a.m. The caller ID showed my own number. I answered, heard nothing but breathing for several long seconds. Then my own voice spoke back to me. "You didn't come," it said. "That's rude. We came all this way for you." "What do you want from me?" I whispered. "Just to finish what started on the road," my voice replied. "You invited us in, not with words, with attention, with fear. Fear is the oldest invitation of all. I never invited anything. Didn't you when you stopped your car for the woman on the road? When you got out to help? When you looked into the mirrors seeking us? When you dream of us night after night? Each time, the door opens a little wider." I hung up, turned off my phone, sat in the dark, listening to the silence of my apartment. A floorboard creaked in the hallway outside my bedroom. Another in my living room. They were inside. I barricaded myself in the bathroom, the only room without windows. Called 911 from my landline. Tried to explain that there were intruders in my apartment. When the police arrived 17 minutes later, they found no one. No signs of forced entry. Nothing disturbed. But they did find something strange. All the mirrors in my apartment had been covered with towels or sheets. I didn't remember doing that. They took a report, suggested again that I seek help. I nodded, promised I would. After they left, I noticed something on my phone. A new video in my camera roll that I didn't remember recording. The timestamp showed it had been taken during the 17 minutes I was waiting for the police. I pressed play. The video showed my bathroom. Me, huddled in the corner, phone clutched to my ear. But I wasn't alone. Standing behind me, so close it could have touched me, was a figure. Tall, emaciated, with limbs that bent at unnatural angles. Its face was just outside the frame, but I could see enough to know it wasn't human. And as I watched, paralyzed with horror, I saw myself in the video turn slightly. Not enough to see the thing behind me, but enough to whisper something. I rewound, turned up the volume, listened closely. My own voice, barely audible. "Come in? I'm leaving this city tonight, driving as far away as I can. I don't know if distance will help, but it's all I can think to do. I'm sharing this story as a warning. If you ever find yourself on a lonely road at night and you see someone or something needing help, keep driving. Don't stop, don't look, don't invite it in. Because they never come alone, and they never leave. Sometimes I catch glimpses of them from the corner of my eye. More of them now following me, watching me. Always just out of direct sight. Sometimes wearing familiar faces. Sometimes wearing no faces at all. The last thing I've learned, the thing that terrifies me most, is that I'm not the only one they're following now. They follow anyone who knows about them. Anyone who fears them. Anyone who believes in them. So, if you've listened this far, if you've pictured them in your mind, if you've felt that cold dread of recognition, you might want to check your mirrors. And whatever you do, don't answer if someone knocks at 3:17 a.m. Because I can see one standing behind you right now. It's smiling. If you enjoyed this video, I want you to take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification so that anytime I drop a new video, YouTube will notify you. Thank you.